Imagine the most selfless, fiercely honest, like drama-free person in your office.
Oh, the one who constantly talks about how much they absolutely hate office politics?
Yeah, exactly. What if I told you that person is likely the most manipulative, ruthless power player in the entire building?
It sounds wild, I know.
Right. I mean, we walk around every day assuming the world runs on basic fairness. You do a good job, you get promoted, you treat people with respect, they treat you with respect.
Which is a really comforting illusion, to be honest.
It totally is. But beneath that polite sort of democratic veneer we've constructed for ourselves, there is a completely different engine driving human interaction.
Yeah, and it's an engine fueled by vanity, deep-seated insecurity, and a really silent, relentless pursuit of control.
Wow.
And the actual mechanics of this hidden game haven't really changed in thousands of years. I mean, we want to believe we've evolved past the ruthless power grabs of ancient history, but human nature remains exactly the same.
We just dress our power plays up in, like, modern clothing. Okay, let's unpack this. Welcome to this deep dive into the sometimes uncomfortable but always fascinating reality of how power actually works.
Yes, it is definitely a heavy topic.
It is. Today, we have a stack of excerpts from Robert Greene's The 48 Laws of Power. And our mission for you on this deep dive is to look at the raw mechanics of power without any moral judgment whatsoever.
Which is harder than it sounds.
Oh, for sure. We're going to be pulling examples from Renaissance Italy, ancient China, the royal court of 17th century France, all to understand the rules of a game that, frankly, we're all playing whether we want to admit it or not.
And understanding that you cannot simply opt out of the game is the crucial starting point here. The modern world demands that we act civilized and fair, which operates very much like the old aristocratic courts.
Right, because in a royal court, overt aggression or like physical violence
or blatant power grabs, they were deeply frowned upon. If you wanted to ruin a political opponent, you couldn't just challenge them to a duel in the courtyard.
That would be too messy.
Way too messy.
Yeah.
You had to outwit them secretly, you had to stab them in the back, but as the text notes, you had to do it wearing a velvet glove.
With the absolute sweetest smile on your face.
Precisely.
The text actually calls it civilized war, and it highlights this incredible paradox you have to navigate today. Like, if you take the strict rules of decency and fairness too literally, you are going to get crushed by the people around you who are quietly ignoring those exact same rules.
Yeah, they will just walk right over you.
But you also can't walk into work acting like a dictator, you know? You have to be congenial yet cunning.
Which brings us to one of the most dangerous archetypes you will encounter in any hierarchy.
Oh, the non-player.
Yes, the person who claims they are a non-player. You will meet people who insist they don't play power games, that they are morally above the fray, and the text warns you to be incredibly wary of these individuals.
Because they're usually the ones pulling the strings.
They are often the most adept players on the board. They simply disguise their manipulation behind a thick smokescreen of virtue.
The reading breaks down these disguise strategies so brilliantly. Take the person who constantly flaunts their own weakness or victimhood.
That's a classic one.
On the surface, it just looks like they are vulnerable and need your help. But true, desperate powerlessness doesn't usually advertise itself.
Right, it tries to hide.
Exactly. Making a relentless public show of weakness is actually a highly effective offensive strategy. It's designed to extract sympathy, induce guilt, and ultimately assert control over the people around you.
Or consider the strategy of demanding strict equality in every single area of life. I mean, it sounds incredibly noble on its face.
Who doesn't want equality?
Exactly. But if you force absolute equality in situations where some people naturally excel, or work harder, or generate more value, you are effectively suppressing exceptional individuals.
Wow, so it's a leveling tactic.
Yeah, that demand for equality is frequently a disguised power strategy used to redistribute rewards on the non-player's terms, ensuring they don't lose ground to someone more talented or driven.
Then there is the weaponization of honesty. You know, the person who is just brutally honest all the time.
Oh, I'm just telling it like it is people.
Yes, claiming they simply value the absolute truth above all else, but absolute unfiltered honesty inevitably hurts people.
It hurts people, and more importantly, it puts everyone else on the defensive. When someone uses radical honesty as a default mode, they are subconsciously asserting moral superiority over you.
Oh, I see.
They force you to react to their self-proclaimed virtue. It's a subtle form of coercion that convinces everyone of their selfless character while they are actually dictating the terms of the relationship and shutting down any dissenting opinions.
But wait, let me push back on this a little bit.
Sure.
Isn't it exhausting to treat every single human interaction like a manipulative chess match? Can't someone just genuinely be nice or honest without a hidden agenda? I mean, do we really have to view everyone in our lives with this level of extreme cynicism?
What's fascinating here is that the text insists we have to shift our entire perspective on morality when it comes to analyzing power.
Okay, how so?
Power is fundamentally amoral. It is a game of circumstances and effects, not internal intentions. This is a tough mental shift, but in this arena, you do not judge your opponents by what is inside their hearts.
So intentions don't matter at all?
Not even a little. What does it matter if a colleague genuinely had your best interests in mind if the actual effect of their bumbling action leads to your project's ruin?
I guess that's true. Ruined is ruined.
Good intentions that cause chaos are still chaotic. You have to train your eye to look only at the outward circumstances, the tangible results of people's moves, and completely ignore the cloud of moral justifications they use to explain them away.
And to see the board that clearly, to focus solely on effects, the text emphasizes mastering your emotions, because a raw emotional response is like the single greatest barrier to acquiring or holding power.
Anger specifically is the most destructive response. Erupting in anger clouds your vision and hardens your enemy's resolve.
Because you're basically showing them your cards, right?
Precisely. If someone undermines you at work, losing your temper just feeds them valuable information about your deepest insecurities. It puts them on the defensive, ready to counterattack, while making you look completely out of control.
The book uses a really striking metaphor for emotional control. It says you need to become like the Roman god Janus.
Ah, the two-faced deity of gates and doorways.
Right. One face is constantly looking forward, analyzing every possible permutation, every pitfall of the future, so absolutely nothing ever catches you by surprise.
And the other face is constantly looking backward. But the critical distinction is that it is not looking backward to nurse grudges or, wallow in past hurts.
Which is what most of us do.
Exactly. And carrying that emotional baggage eats away at your energy and power. The backward-glancing face is entirely analytical.
Like a post-mortem.
Yes. It means looking at a failed business partnership and coldly analyzing the structural flaws in the contract you signed, rather than stalking your ex-partner's social media at 2 a.m. to see if their new venture is failing.
We've all been there.
You extract the raw data, learn the lesson, vow never to fall into that trap again, and move forward, completely unburdened by resentment.
And that ability to completely suppress your ego, to look backward analytically rather than emotionally, is exactly what's required to survive the most dangerous person in your life.
Your boss.
Yes, your boss. Which brings us to the first practical law of the text. Law number 1, never outshine the master.
This is perhaps the most common and fatal mistake capable people make, precisely because they fundamentally misunderstand the fragile vanity of those who hold power over them.
The historical example the text gives to illustrate this is staggering. It centers on Nicolas Fouquet, who was the finance minister for King Louis XIV of France in the early 1600s.
A very ambitious man.
Very. The prime minister had just died and Fouquet desperately wanted the promotion. So to ingratiate himself with the king, to prove definitively how indispensable, brilliant, and well-connected he was, Fouquet threw a party.
But not just any party.
No. He threw what was arguably the most lavish, spectacular event the world had ever seen at his newly finished chateau, Vaux-le-Vicomte.
The guest of honor was the king himself. And Fouquet spared absolutely no expense to showcase his immense value. He gathered the greatest minds of Europe. Molière wrote a play specifically for the occasion.
That is a serious flex.
Right. Guests were served a massive 7-course dinner featuring exotic foods from the Orient that had never been tasted in France before. There were moonlit promenades through geometrically aligned gardens and massive synchronized fireworks displays reflecting over the canals.
It sounds incredible.
It was a flawless masterpiece of entertaining.
And everyone in attendance agreed it was the most amazing affair they had ever witnessed. So Fouquet goes to sleep that night, completely certain he had secured his position as the most brilliant man in France.
He thought he had it in the bag.
He really did, making him the obvious, undeniable choice for prime minister. But the very next day, he was arrested by the king's head musketeer.
Just completely blindsided.
Yeah, he was put on a sham trial for embezzlement, mostly for financial maneuvers he had executed on the king's own behalf, by the way, found guilty, and sent to a brutal prison high in the Pyrenees Mountains. He spent the last 20 years of his life in solitary confinement.
It's a terrifying shift in fortune.
Think about the last time you solved a massive, complex problem for your boss, maybe pulling late nights to save a major client account. And instead of a thank you or a promotion, you got the cold shoulder. You were suddenly left off important emails.
You didn't do a bad job. You did exactly what Fouquet did. You inadvertently made them feel expendable.
Because Louis XIV was the Sun King. He could not countenance being outdone in lavishness, charm, or brilliance by his own finance minister.
As Fouquet presented spectacle after mind-bending spectacle, Louis didn't see a highly competent, loyal servant proving his worth to the crown.
No, he felt threatened.
He saw a subordinate flaunting superior wealth and taste, making the king's own subjects more enamored with Fouquet than with the monarch. Fouquet didn't flatter the king's ego. He triggered the king's deepest insecurities.
Here's where it gets really interesting. Think of this in a way we've all seen at least once. It's exactly like a bridesmaid showing up to a wedding wearing a spectacular, custom-designed, show-stopping white gown.
Oh, that is the perfect analogy.
Right, like no matter how much she smiles, no matter how many glowing toasts she gives, claiming she just wanted to look her best to celebrate the bride, she has committed the ultimate unforgivable sin. She upstaged the center of attention on their designated day.
And Fouquet wore the white gown to the Sun King's wedding.
He sure did.
And the consequence of wearing that white gown is that masters will rarely, if ever, admit their insecurity to themselves or anyone else.
They can. It would ruin their self-image.
Exactly. They won't pull you aside and say, you made me feel small and incompetent today. They will simply find a convenient, semi-plausible excuse like embezzlement, or suddenly claiming you aren't a culture fit to permanently rid themselves of your presence.
Out of sight, out of mind.
In Louis's case, he replaced Fouquet with a man famous for giving the dullest, most frugal parties in Paris. Then he literally stole Fouquet's architects, artists, and garden designers to build the Palace of Versailles.
Ensuring no one would ever outshine him again.
Exactly.
So how do you show you are competent without getting sent to corporate solitary confinement? The text contrasts Fouquet's massive blunder with the brilliant strategy of the Renaissance astronomer Galileo.
In the early 1600s, Galileo was in a highly precarious spot. He was scientifically brilliant, but financially he was completely dependent on the patronage of various rulers.
He was basically living grant to grant.
Pretty much. He would invent a new military compass, give it to a duke, and maybe receive a few trinkets or be sent a couple of paying students in return. It was a life of constant, exhausting insecurity, perpetually begging for funding to continue his research.
Then he makes a massive breakthrough. He discovers the moons of Jupiter with his newly improved telescope.
A huge deal.
Massive. Normally, a scientist in his position would have chopped up this discovery to maximize short-term gains, giving the telescope to one wealthy patron, dedicating the published book to another, spreading the credit around.
But he completely changed his strategy.
He focused everything on one single target, the immensely powerful Medici family.
And he executed this with incredible psychological precision. The Medicis had recently adopted Jupiter, the mightiest of the Roman gods, as their official family symbol.
So clever.
So when Galileo discovered the 4 moons orbiting Jupiter, he didn't just announce a dry scientific fact. He transformed it into a cosmic, divine event honoring his target.
He played the PR game.
Perfectly. He announced that the heavens themselves were reflecting the ascendancy and glory of the Medici family. He publicly claimed the 4 newly discovered moons represented Cosimo II and his 3 brothers, eternally revolving around their mighty founder.
He even commissioned an elaborate emblem showing Jupiter sitting on a cloud with the 4 stars circling him and presented it to Cosimo II. He tied their family name directly to the fabric of the universe.
Galileo deeply understood that powerful masters don't ultimately care about abstract science, empirical truth, or even the bottom line as much as they care about their own personal glory.
Wow.
By linking them to the stars, he didn't challenge their intellectual authority or make them feel like mere checkbooks funding a smarter man's work. He made them shine brilliantly among all the competing courts of Italy.
And what was his reward for stroking that ego? Cosimo II made Galileo his official court philosopher and mathematician with a guaranteed massive full-time salary.
His days of begging for scraps were permanently over. He made the master outshine everyone else, and he reaped the long-term rewards.
Which begs the question for you today. How do you actually apply Galileo's strategy without becoming a complete unprincipled sycophant? You still need your own career to progress.
It requires a strategic framing of your ideas. If you solve a massive problem, you don't parade it as your sole genius. You frame it as a natural extension of the boss's previous guidance.
Oh, I see.
You might say, based on the strategy you laid out last quarter, I was able to implement this solution. You are subtly transferring the raw glow of the success upward.
That feels deeply counterintuitive because you want the credit.
Of course you do. But by consistently making your manager look like a visionary to their superiors, you become indispensable. They will pull you up the ladder with them because your competence enhances their power without threatening their ego.
The text does offer one crucial caveat, a reversal to this law. It says you shouldn't worry about protecting the ego of every single person you meet.
Right, there are exceptions.
If your master is a falling star, meaning they are incredibly weak, losing their grip on power, or clearly on their way out, then you shouldn't be merciful. You can discreetly hasten their downfall, outdo them publicly, and maneuver to take their place.
But if they are firm in their position, you have to bide your time. Play the competent subordinate, make your best ideas seem like their ideas, and intentionally fade into the background so their star burns the brightest.
It takes immense discipline to disguise your own strengths in the short term.
It does, but it is the only reliable way to remain in control and avoid becoming a victim of their insecurity.
So keeping your head down manages the people above you. But what about building your own alliances? Once you start accumulating a little bit of power or influence, the natural human instinct is to surround yourself with people you already know and trust.
Your friends.
Yes, your friends. But Law 2 flips this completely upside down. It states, never put too much trust in friends. Learn how to use enemies.
This is, without a doubt, one of the most counterintuitive yet historically proven laws in the entire book.
It goes against everything we're taught.
It really does. To understand the profound danger of elevating your friends, we have to examine the tragedy of the Byzantine Emperor Michael III in the mid-9th century.
Okay, set the scene for us.
So, Michael ascended to the throne when he was young and highly inexperienced. He was immediately surrounded by vicious plotters and potential murderers in the court.
A very stressful work environment.
Extremely. He desperately needed someone he could trust absolutely to watch his back. So he turned to his closest friend, a man named Basilius. Basilius was a former peasant, a stable boy who had actually saved Michael's life from a wild charging horse years earlier.
Michael literally owed him his life.
Operating on standard human logic, Michael believed that immense gratitude would guarantee eternal loyalty. He stubbornly ignored the advice of seasoned advisors who recommended highly qualified statesmen for key roles and instead made his untrained best friend his chief counselor.
That is a huge promotion for a stable boy.
Massive. He sent Basilius to the finest schools, tripled his salary, and showered him with unprecedented royal perks just to keep him happy and secure.
But exposure to the immense perks of power fundamentally changed Basilius. He became avaricious and paranoid. He convinced Emperor Michael that his own uncle, Bardas, who was the highly competent head of the army, was secretly plotting a coup.
Paranoia is contagious.
It is. Basilius relentlessly poisoned the emperor's mind until Michael actually agreed to have his own uncle murdered. During a public horse race, Basilius literally stabbed Bardas to death in the crowded stands.
Which is horrifying on its own.
And then casually asked Michael to make him head of the army in his place.
And blinding friendship caused Michael to agree. But the situation kept deteriorating. When Michael, facing impending financial ruin from his own lavish spending, finally asked Basilius to simply repay a small fraction of the money he had borrowed over the years, Basilius refused with a look of utter impudence.
Oh, man.
That was the horrifying moment Michael realized the depth of his mistake. He had created an uncontrollable monster. By trying to secure a friend's loyalty, he had given Basilius more money, more loyalists in the army, and more raw power than the emperor himself possessed.
And just a few weeks later, Michael woke up in his bedchamber completely surrounded by soldiers. Basilius watched calmly as they stabbed his best friend, the emperor, to death.
It's brutal.
Basilius then rode through the streets of Byzantium, brandishing the severed head of his former benefactor on a long pike, and crowned himself the new emperor.
The ultimate betrayal.
Wait, let's stop for a second. Are we advising the listener to never hire, partner, or work with their friends? That sounds incredibly paranoid. And honestly, it sounds like a deeply lonely way to live. If you can't trust the people you love, who can you trust?
If we connect this to the bigger picture, it's about profoundly understanding the hidden psychology of the favor. When you hire a friend, or do a massive life-changing favor for them, you naturally assume you are cementing their loyalty.
Because that's what makes sense.
But human nature is vastly more complex and contradictory. The act of extreme kindness actually unbalances the relationship. Deep down, people want to feel they earned their fortune, their job, or their status through their own merit and hard work.
So giving it to them robs them of that feeling.
Exactly. When you unilaterally bestow a position on a friend, they feel a secret, gnawing sense of condescension. The favor itself becomes oppressive. Over time, that inner discomfort translates into resentment, envy, and a twisted expectation that you owe them even more.
And how does that resentment actually manifest in the real world? If you've hired a friend, you start noticing the microaggressions. They show up late, they push back on minor requests just to flex their autonomy, they make passive-aggressive jokes in meetings.
They are subconsciously trying to rebalance the power dynamic because they hate feeling fundamentally indebted to you.
Which brings us to the shocking alternative the text proposes, using your enemies. The scene shifts to China, specifically the year AD 959, when General Chao Kuang-yin became Emperor Song.
This is a fascinating story.
The historical pattern of leadership at this time was brutally repetitive. A general would become emperor, and to survive his first year, he'd systematically murder all his fellow generals.
But inevitably, new generals would rise up through the ranks and murder him a few years later. It was a never-ending cycle of bloody military coups.
Emperor Sung acutely understood the odds. He knew his so-called friends in the army were essentially wolves, just waiting for a moment of weakness to chew him up. So he executed a maneuver completely unexpected in the annals of Chinese history.
He invited the most powerful, dangerous commanders in the entire army to a lavish, private banquet.
Just a nice dinner with friends.
Right. Once they were deep into the wine, he dismissed the imperial guards. He looked at these hardened men who he knew for a fact were dreaming of stealing the throne, and he offered them a stunning deal.
What did he say?
He basically said, living in constant fear of coup is terrible for all of us. Resign your military commands today, and in exchange, I will give you massive, beautiful estates, immense personal wealth, and a peaceful, secure life of absolute luxury.
These hardened generals were terrified he had poisoned the wine or was about to execute them, but instead he successfully bribed them into early retirement.
It was a stroke of genius.
In one single evening, he turned a pack of ravenous wolves into docile lambs. He completely neutralized his greatest military threats without shedding a single drop of blood.
And he pushed this psychology even further with active armed enemies of the state. When he defeated rival rebel kings on the battlefield, like King Lu and Qian Shu, his closest advisors vehemently told him to execute them immediately.
Which would be standard practice.
The advisors presented undeniable written proof these men were actively conspiring to assassinate him. Instead, Emperor Sung spared their lives. He brought them to the capital and gave them honored positions in his own court.
He even handed Qian Shu a sealed package containing all the intercepted letters proving the assassination conspiracy, just to quietly show him, I know exactly what you plan to do, I hold your life in my hands, and I'm choosing to spare you anyway.
And the result of this massive gamble, those former mortal enemies became his most fiercely loyal, trusted friends and advisors.
Because a defeated enemy expects absolutely nothing but death or imprisonment.
Right. When you suddenly show them unprecedented mercy, when you pardon them, the gratitude they feel is overwhelming, pure, and completely genuine. They feel they have a second lease on life and everything to prove to you.
Precisely. A friend expects your favors as a basic right of the relationship. An enemy views a favor as a profound, unearned gift. They will work 10 times harder to prove they deserved your mercy.
It calls to mind the profound quote from Abraham Lincoln mentioned in the text. During the height of the American Civil War, Lincoln was harshly criticized by his own cabinet for publicly referring to Southerners as fellow human beings in error rather than as irreconcilable monsters who needed to be entirely destroyed.
And Lincoln simply replied, do I not destroy my enemies when I make them my friends?
That is such a powerful reframing of conflict.
Emperor Sung completely broke a centuries-old cycle of horrific violence using this exact psychological insight. And because of it, the Sung dynasty ruled China for over 300 years.
The hard lesson here is that your enemies, or even just your office rivals, are an untapped goldmine of potential loyalty, provided you know exactly how to convert them.
So what does this all mean? We've covered the royal courts of Renaissance Italy, the battlefields of ancient China, the spectacular downfall in the French royal court. But how does this translate to you, sitting in traffic, walking your dog, Or prepping for a brutal Monday morning meeting.
Yeah, bring it back to reality.
Exactly. Whether you are navigating a massive corporate hierarchy, managing a contentious community project, or just dealing with everyday petty office politics, the core lesson of these laws is to become hyper-aware of human vanity and insecurity.
You have to accept the reality that people, especially people with authority over you, are profoundly driven by their own egos. If you are rapidly climbing the ladder, your raw brilliance is not automatically an asset. It is an active threat to the people stationed above you.
So true.
You must internalize the discipline of Galileo. You have to find ways to make your superiors feel like the sun, letting them bask in the glow of your hard work, while carefully avoiding the tragic, self-indulgent vanity of Fouquet.
And when you are in a position to build your own team, you have to be wary of the hidden, destructive mechanics of gratitude and envy. Hiring your friends might feel incredibly safe and comfortable in the short term, but it almost always breeds entitlement and a hidden, corrosive resentment.
Sometimes, taking the risk to build a bridge with a former rival, or assigning a massive project to an active skeptic in your department, gives you a far more loyal and hardworking ally. They are driven by the raw need to prove their worth to you.
It is undoubtedly a lot to take in.
It is.
And it requires a fundamental, sometimes uncomfortable shift in how you view the people closest to you. It asks you to temporarily put away the romantic, comforting ideals of perfect fairness and absolute honesty and train yourself to look at the power board exactly as it is, not as you wish it to be.
Which brings us right back to the most fascinating and perhaps unsettling concept from the very beginning of our discussion.
The so-called non-player.
We unpacked how demanding equality, wielding perfect honesty, or maintaining a constant display of weakness and naivete are very often just subconscious, deeply embedded power strategies.
They are used to assert moral superiority, induce guilt, and subtly coerce everyone else into playing by their specific rules.
Yeah.
Which leaves you with a lingering, provocative question to ponder as you go back into your day. Think about the most selfless, pure-hearted, brutally honest person in your life right now. The one who loudly and constantly claims they absolutely despise office politics and drama. Given everything we've unpacked today, are they actually opting out of the game?
Or are they, in fact, the most brilliant, ruthless player you know?